step right up and get your tickets for another moment in gaming history. Welcome back to the channel, or if it's your first time here, welcome to the channel. This is a segment I call Moments in Gaming History. It's a key pillar of my particular channel where I go into various different moments throughout history and look at what I consider key moments in video game development or movements that basically push the medium forward. Today is no exception. We're going to take a look at Pac-Man. I know most of you have looked at it, most of us take it for granted because most of us have been seeing this game and playing this game or played this game at some point in our lives. Pretty much everybody has done that. But the importance of it and how it changed the industry and how it opened up the industry to new audiences cannot be understated. So we're going to talk about how the main developer, Toru Iwatani, got his start, how he got into development, how he developed pac-man, what his thinking process was, and what his overall goal and reach was in the market of the day, and just how well it took off. So get ready to fall into Pac-Man fever, because here we go! Pac-Man was the brainchild of a man named Toru Iwatani, who joined Namco in 1977 at the young age of 22. He began working on the repair of failed game boards that were coming from the black and white Atari games that were being distributed throughout Japan at the time. But he had other ideas. You see, he had a deep interest in pinball, and before long he had actually talked Namco into supporting a project to make a digital version of pinball. Before long, they had their first independently released video game called BG. This was a digital arcade game developed by Iwatani himself, and emboldened by his success, began working on other games. Galaxian, which was their first shoot-'em-up game released in 1979, followed up by the booming success of the growing shooter market that was started by Space Invaders. Iwatani began to see a gap in the gaming market in Japan. It was filled with tons of shooting games, where the only object was really to kill as many things on the screen at a time as you could, and they all had a very similar theme. So he began to look westward towards the States for inspiration, noticing what Atari was doing at the time. He wanted to do something different to stand out, and Atari was having a lot of success with a lot of different types of games that they were doing at the time. He was also inspired by the happy nature of some of the games he saw coming from the system, and wanted to imitate that model to an extent. He came up with the idea of exploring some concepts that might appeal to families and women at this point, who were a minority in the gaming market when compared to men who would enjoy the more aggressive nature of Space Invaders and Galaxian. To hear Iwatani put it, in the late 70s, video game arcades in Japan were called game centers. They were playgrounds for boys and young men. The only video games on offer were brutal affairs, involving the killing of aliens. My aim was to come up with a game that had an endearing charm and was easy to play, involved lots of lighthearted fun, and the women and couples could enjoy. When it came time to figure out what sort of game I could do, I suggested basing it around a particular verb. I thought of a variety of verbs, such as grab, surround. In those days, those were proliferated in tabletop games, including a considerable number of game machines installed in cafes and other businesses. I figured that a game made in the image of a culinary environment based around the verb to eat could be fun. Given his recent successes, Iwatani was given a team of 8 programmers and designers. They began work in earnest, throwing out ideas, keeping some, and, well, disregarding others, over a period of 18 months. During this time, Iwatani got the idea for the main character's design. Yes, I know, this is actually pretty well known, but let's go into it anyway. He was actually eating a slice of pizza. As soon as he removed the first slice, the idea hit him. A yellow circle with a slice out of it. A pizza pie with a slice out of it. That was the idea. He decided that it would have a friendly and endearing personality so people could relate to him, and added some ghosts that would chase him around that would give that kind of Tom and Jerry feel that he thought audiences might enjoy. They then started to add point bonuses like cherries and things like that based off slot machines from American casinos that they thought were cool at the time. Iwatani put it best by explaining it this way: because Pac-Man was a game about eating, we started by adding cherries, strawberries, oranges, and other fruit. Once we began running out of ideas, we put in things like Galaxians and keys. Eventually, they would come up with the idea of warp tunnels. This gave more routes for escape and a wide array of tactics on the stage. And I know what you're asking, what about the power pellets? Well, interestingly enough, they got that idea from watching Popeye. I know, right? They saw the main hero eating some spinach and turning the tables on Pluto. They thought, hey, this would make a fun gameplay mechanic. So they decided to put in larger power pellets so that Pac-Man could do the same thing to the ghosts. All of these mechanics were simple and easy to understand. And I think Iwatani put it best himself when he said the following: when you look at a game, you must be able to understand what to do immediately. You should be able to explain the objective in no more than 2 sentences. I don't see that with modern games. They are very complex. Of course, these complex games attract hardcore gamers. But if you want wide success, you have to make something that is fun and simple. You can only do this by studying human behavior. My first objective when creating a game is fun. Fun has to come first above everything. All of the pieces seem to be in play. The main mechanic of eating pellets was fun. The ghosts added tension by chasing the player. This gave the players a sense of fear and panic as they navigated the maze, while dispersal points broke off pursuit to ensure the player didn't feel overwhelmed. They even added some programming logic into how each ghost chased the player so that they didn't just start following the player in a line. In the end, all of this hard work would pay off big. Pac-Man took off like wildfire, not only in Japan, but in the States. People dropped over 1 billion quarters into the game, selling over 100,000 arcade units in less than 2 years. By the end of 1982, they would sell over 400,000 cabinets. Arcades were lining up with multiple units so that people wouldn't have to wait as long in line to get their turn. Pac-Man fever swept the nation. Tons of merchandise was sold, more games came out in the series, it even had a popular cartoon series in the 80s. The world was, and still is in many ways, in love with Pac-Man. A love affair that's lasted over 40 years. In the end, Pac-Man popularized video games in ways few other games had done before it or since. It took video games more mainstream and opened up the target demographic further than it had ever been opened before. It also opened up merchandising, as this was one of the first times a strictly video game character had this kind of appeal outside of the arcade. What are your thoughts on this though? Do you think this is an important moment in gaming history? What was your first experience with the game? Do you still play in the arcades and like Dave & Buster's and things like that today? Let me know in the comments below. For now though, thank you for watching this far and for spending part of your day with me. If I could ask you for one more favor, please hit the like button. It really helps my channel. And if you're not, consider subscribing. That helps out my channel a ton. But until next time, happy gaming!